Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is John Van Lunen, and you are listening to Treasures of the Outer Banks, episode 20. In this episode, I talk sailing with Hardy Peters. Hardy Peters is a local businessman who owns East Coast Sailboats. He is a dealer and distributor for several recreational sailboat lines, both locally and across the country. And he is also owner of Surfer Girl. Surfer Girl is a 38-foot catamaran that does charter tours out of Duck, North Carolina. And when he's not doing that, he is organizing youth sailing camps on the Outer Banks to teach the young kids around here how to sail. And he also hosts and sponsors a couple of regattas, one in the spring, one in the fall. When he's not doing all that, he may be racing in the World 1000. It's a sailboat race they have every other year, I believe, and they race on the open ocean in the Atlantic, and they start in Florida and they end in Virginia Beach. And he did that for the first time in 2022, represented the Outer Banks extremely well, and we talk a lot about that as well as some of the other things he has going on with sailing. I think you will like this podcast episode, so sit back and enjoy. So it's the summer of 2022. You're in the World 1000 race. You're 5 miles offshore, and describe what it's like out there.
Well, you're hanging off the side of a boat in a trapeze on an F-18, which is 18 feet long, and it's crystal clear blue waters, and you're dodging turtles and other sea creatures because you don't want to hit them for good reason, but you don't want to damage your boat at the same time.
Exactly.
And you're sailing along, and you're doing 15 knots, and it's upwind, and you're just having a great time, and you realize that you've been on the water for 3 hours, and you get another 5 hours to go.
Right.
So as you adjust your trapeze harness and hope to get comfortable.
Yeah, you better get comfortable for a long ride, right?
Yeah, you move on.
That's great. So you came to the Outer Banks. Did you have sailing like in your future? Did you know you had sailing in your future, or was it just let's relocate to the Outer Banks and see what happens?
No, actually, we sailing was not in the conversation at that time. I was sailing. I had a boat, and I was sailing recreationally for fun and stuff like that. We came out here to relocate for a better life for the kids, and it was very intentional for us to come here because it's North Carolina and it's the Outer Banks, and it's just a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
My career aspirations were very different at that time, and I kind of fell into it.
Excellent. So at what point did you decide to concentrate on sailing or, really focus on that?
It was a Wednesday afternoon, and
this is very specific.
It was a Wednesday afternoon, about 3:00, and I was Mr. Mom during that time because I had sold my business, and I was trying to see where I was going to reinvent myself or try something new or continue on in the same career that I had here. And it was 3:00. The kids were in school. My wife was on a business trip. I was on my third beer, and I was cooking dinner. And I looked at myself and I said, this is not sustainable at all. And so I made a choice. I said, well, I need to go find something to do. And what do I love to do? And I love to sail. So I contacted John Britt at Norbank Sailing and Water Sports, and went and worked as a part-time instructor.
Excellent.
The next season.
That's funny. So you're obviously very active in the local sailing community. Tell me about some of the things you do in the sailing community right now.
Well, over the years, we started a sailing camp
for kids.
And that developed into sailing lessons for adults as well too. And we've kind of backed down and focused mainly on the kids at this point in time. But I was also active with the Collington crowd, and then there's a group in Hatteras that we try to help out as well too. Worked with Barry Wicker and Manio at the Maritime Museum with their regattas over the years. We have kids.
They have a special boat over there, the Moth boat?
No, that's Elizabeth City.
Okay.
Elizabeth City. So Elizabeth City started off as a small sailing program as well too, and they eventually morphed into River City Community Sailing.
Okay.
And that brought in. The Moth was a historic boat that was built in Elizabeth City, and it's still being built as a kit.
Is that right?
there, and they do a regatta every year, and so we help support that regatta up in Elizabeth City, as well as a school. They use a lot of our boats and everything.
So what boat does the Manio?
Manio uses a couple different boats. They use mainly the Opti,
Right.
which is a starter boat for kids, and then they use a 420.
Okay.
And so that's a standard boat for a little bit older kids, double-handed boat.
Okay. So you got a lot of youth stuff going on. Where do you see some of this stuff going in the near future?
Well, I think, Outer Banks has such a great resource, and that's all this water. And when you look out and you see the water in the Currituck, Albemarle, Roanoke, Croatan, or the Pamlico, what do you see? Water.
Wide open
You don't
spaces.
see wide open spaces. You don't see a lot of boats. There are a lot of folks that sail. There's a lot of folks that motorboat. And there's a lot of folks that kayak and paddleboard, and it's such a great resource. I see sailing as a destination for the Outer Banks, either through recreational sailing or through events. I mean, bringing sailors here to a venue to sail, which would be great. Almost like a organization did in the past, and Manio, they were bringing in classes to class racing and everything like that. I think that we have that opportunity to do this, and I've pitched that to the Tourism Bureau once or twice, and I think that they see it, but the question is, how do we do that? I think that I see the future of it to be that, but the only hurdle we have to get over is water access.
Right.
That's the biggest hurdle we have here.
I try to explain that to people. Despite being surrounded by water, it's difficult to get a boat on the water
Correct.
around here for some reason. I don't know
Correct.
why, but it is. And you have hosted some regattas. I mean,
Yes, we.
Yep. So it's not foreign language to you.
No, it's not foreign language. We host two main regattas. One is the Duck Cup out of Duck, which is kind of a historic race here in the Outer
Gone
Banks.
a long time now.
Yeah, it's a multi-hull regatta, and it's a distance regatta, which is a lot of fun. We were able to start that back up again a couple of years ago, and then we created our own race. Our own regatta is going to be the OBX Multi-Hull Sail Fest for catamarans and trimarans, any kind of multi-hulls, both class racing, which we do have a good F-18 fleet that comes in and races, and then we have the Weta trimarans, and then we have an open fleet, which is Hobies and Prindles and Hobie Getaways and all kinds of other boats. And it's just it's a fun 2-day regatta, but it usually starts about 2 days before that with folks coming in to practice and
coming in, prepping, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
What time of the years are these regattas usually held, roughly?
Duck Cup is held in June, and OBX Sailfest is held in September.
Gotcha. Weather permitting.
And we're starting to get some folks from out of town that are saying, hey, we hear you have this class regatta in September, and we'd like to come. Or a class has reached out to us and said, hey, we'd like to make you one of our stops. So that's actually pretty flattering.
Excellent. Years ago when I was the Hobie dealer, there was a group out of, I want to say Raleigh, and they always had a summer thing in Hatteras.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they're still doing that. I don't know.
I haven't heard.
That might have fallen by the wayside. So the big thing I want to touch upon, the exciting thing, and all that stuff is great, but the World 1000. So explain what the World 1000 is.
So the World 1000 was started by two brothers back in the 70s as a bet, a barroom bet.
That's the best part of this story.
As a barroom bet. They said they couldn't sail from Virginia Beach to Fort Lauderdale. Well, they were stubborn enough that they actually did it on Hobie 16s. And then back in those days, it was nonstop. It was a 3-man crew. You rotated one out every 12 hours, and it was north to south, which prevailing winds that time of the year is south to north. So they quickly changed that regatta to start in Fort Lauderdale or Miami or wherever at that time, to come south to north.
And I guess that third guy would drive the wagon to follow the chase wagon.
Correct.
Which
they'd pull up on a beach, and I guess they had a radio or a VHF or something to communicate, or they had a preset spot where they were going to stop.
Funny.
So that's how it started. It ran for 20 some odd years. And then one of the brothers died, and not during a race, but just of age.
Yeah.
And it just picked up back in 2019. They did a test run, and then in it was supposed to run in 2020, which obviously COVID, and it actually ran in 2022. We had 13 teams, and all 13 teams finished.
Excellent. Is 13 a pretty healthy number for that race, or has it been a lot bigger?
It has been a lot bigger. Yes, there've been 25 boats in those races. To have more boats than 20 is a lot of logistics.
Yeah,
a lot of logistics.
I get you. And why did you want to sail in this race?
Long story short, after sailing here in the Outer Banks for a couple years, I'd met some really great guys, great sailors, interesting stories, and they all talked about the Whirl. And I was sailing a Hobie 18 at the time, and I decided to up my game and got a X-Whirl boat. It was a Nacra I-20, and I just fell in love with the boat. And then, over the time, I'm like, if they ever run this race, I'd love to do it. That'd be bucket list. I never thought in a million years that they would actually, somebody would pick it up again. But I've done some.
I was bluffing.
So I had to put up or shut up at that point.
So you get in the race. You start prepping. You started prepping way out, I believe. How much preparation does it require?
We started about a year. Originally, it was supposed to run in 2020, so we started a year beforehand. 10 months to a year beforehand once it was announced. Obviously, we need to buy a boat. We need to practice. We need a sailing partner. And so a buddy of mine who's also a great sailor, he was a monohull sailor, not a catamaran sailor, James Eaton. He's a phenomenal guy. And we were talking one day. I'm like, we were just joking around, like, hey, maybe we should do the Everglades Challenge. Maybe we should do the Whirl. I heard it's running again. And we're like, yeah, let's do it. So we did the Everglades Challenge together on a boat to figure out whether we could sail together. That was
see if no fights break out.
Yeah. So and then we decided to do the Whirl, and so that's how it kind of got started. And you have to prepare. I mean, it's both physical, mental, equipment wise. You have to get a ground crew. You have to. There's a lot to do. So you divide up the team into three areas: those that race, those that ground crew, and the team manager. And the team manager is like they run the show,
right? And
that was my wife. And so,
if she says no go, we're not going. And if she says we're ready, we're ready.
Yeah, all we said was yes, ma'am. And then the second most important part, as a racer, we're not the most important part. The team manager is, and then the ground crew after that. Because without the ground crew, you can't get anything done.
Right.
Because as a competitor, all you're focused on your gear, your route, and sailing the boat.
Yeah.
And not getting hurt.
Right.
And that takes up 99.9% of your brain capacity.
Yeah, you can't be exhausted pulling the boat out of the water, packing everything up, and all that other good stuff.
Right.
What's it like getting off that boat after 8 hours?
You have to learn how to walk again sometimes.
And I should tell listeners that my experience is on a Hobie Cat, and it's got a trampoline. There's no cushy place to there's no cockpit. There's no cabin. You're just on a mattress. Yeah. You're just on a flimsy mattress, just sailing across the water. So
unless you're in a trapeze harness, and it better be comfortable.
Yeah,
it better be comfortable. That's another thing.
And you're concentrating the whole time. It's hard to just space out while you're on a trapeze wire.
You can't. Trust me. So a little story is you imagine this. So you're on a boat doing 15, 20 miles an hour.
Which is fast on a boat.
Which is fast on a boat. You're sailing upwind. You're in a trapeze harness. You're focused on the waves, the wind, your direction. Your crew's focused on pulling the lines and pulling the sheets and getting everything adjusted because it's a constant adjustment.
Yeah.
And then you have to do that for anywhere between 7 and 12 hours. Just constant focus.
Yes.
So your mind tends to drift every once in a while. And when your mind drifts, things go pear-shaped.
Real quickly.
Yeah.
So do you guys change positions at all?
No.
Really?
No.
Wow. That makes it even harder to concentrate.
Unless we're tacking, unless we're turning.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying the helm or the mate, you know.
Yeah. So there's a skipper and there's a crew.
There's always a skipper.
And there's always a crew.
And the skipper stays the same.
Correct.
Unless there was something
happens.
traumatic happening.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I don't think my attention span would last more than 15 minutes out there.
One quick story. So
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah, let me tell you what happens. So we're off the South Carolina coast. We had left Folly Beach, and it was light winds to start with, but we knew it was going to build. It was building 15, 20, 25, gusting at 30, gusting at 35. I mean, and we're on a downwind. We have the spinnaker up. We're averaging 17 to 20 knots on a downwind. It's just shallow, so the waves are a little short, and we're focusing. I mean, we're focusing, and usually we can anticipate stuff. You know, the crew, you know, anticipates a wind gust. He'll let the sheet out and pull it back in. I'll bear off a little bit or go up depending on whether we need to power down or power up. And we were looking at this fishing boat, and it's like, oh man, they're way out here. Yeah, we got to watch out. We got to make sure that we don't, get in their way because they're pulling nets and everything like that. And so we're going and cruising along, and we just failed to see a wind gust behind us. And at 35 knots, it flipped us. We pitch poled all the way forward, and I went flying. I was still hooked into my trapeze harness, and I went flying 20 feet. I skipped off the jib.
No.
And was 20 feet in front of the boat.
No.
And there comes the shrimp boat.
Right.
And I'm sure they got a pretty good show, but it was the fastest capsize riding we've ever done.
Right. Oh my gosh.
And that was followed by 4 more of those.
Really?
Yeah. So we 5 times in one day. And it was a very windy day. It was very gusty. We were tired.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine, going 4 or 5 days, and by that 5th day trying to concentrate for 6 hours in 25-mile-an-hour winds. I just don't see that happening. You know, the fatigue, the mental fatigue, all that stuff. That's crazy. So was that the scariest part of the race?
That's a very good question. So I would say probably the second day would be the scariest part of the race. We had that time in the Outer Banks, there was a low over us. We had a nor'easter, a very powerful nor'easter. It was blowing 50 plus here. And the bottom of that low had stretched all the way down to Florida, and we were sailing into it. Really? And so it was all upwind, and it was blowing. We had a 62-mile leg that day, and we were tack, 3 miles, 5 miles out, a mile from shore, 5 miles back out, a mile to shore. And so in 6 hours, we did 22 miles. We realized this after the fact, but we were going out. We had just tacked. We're heading out to sea. The waves are 8 to 10 feet. Really? And the boat comes up over a wave, and you kind of anticipate you bear off to ride down the backside and come back up again. And we launched off this way. It was real steep. I mean, literally the boat came out of the water. And when we landed, the boat dropped. My harness broke, the hook on my harness, and I went overboard. And so James, and I had the tiller extension in my hand the whole time. And so James, my partner, was like, Hardy, where are you? And so the boat capsizes. I knew exactly what was going to happen. As soon as the wind caught that trampoline, it was blowing 30. That boat was going to take off. There was no way I was going to catch it. Yeah. Luckily, wind was blowing on shore. Didn't hit me till 2 days afterwards, what kind of situation that was. Yeah. But luckily, there was another team that came and picked me up. They plopped me on them. Luckily, this guy's telling me, it's like, okay, get on the boat, sit here, do this, do that. I'm like, boy, this guy's really, really professional. I find out later he's a Coast Guard rescue pilot. But anyway, so they dropped me off on the boat, and we realized we have a lot of damage, and we had to withdraw for the day. So we found a beach, and there was a condo. So we figured there's some kind of access there, and so still 8 to 10 foot waves. And so
coming into the beach,
and we're coming into the beach at 15 knots.
Oh, jeez!
Pull the dagger boards up, riding off the face of a wave, all the way up to the beach, 50, 60 feet up on the beach, and come around. So it was.
I'm sorry. What happened at the end?
We spun.
Yeah. Okay, good.
It was interesting.
Oh man, So his name was James, right?
James Eaton, yeah.
And once you fall off, he's got the whole boat.
He's got the whole boat, but he's in a crew position, doesn't have the tiller in his hand, and so the boat capsizes.
Okay.
He weighs 167 pounds.
He wasn't getting it up.
It's all technique.
Okay.
Possible.
Okay.
Possible.
Yeah.
And he was trying, but luckily the other team was nearby. But that was the risk. So the risk was you couldn't get it up. Boat floats in the shore, gets destroyed in the surf. I float to shore. I surf my way into the shore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I go try to help. So that was the alternative.
Right. Were you that close to shore?
We're about a half mile off.
It was taking a while, but yeah.
Yeah, 30 knots. It's not that long.
Yeah. I was on a Hobie. I was in my 20s. I was on a Hobie 16. I was at the helm. My buddy was on the wire, hanging from the trapeze wire. I look back to admire the wake we were throwing, and when I look forward, he's gone. And when I look around, like, the Hobie 16, there's no place to hide. I look back, he's still hanging from the wire. He had lost his footing. He had swung behind me. He's hanging now he's in the water behind the boat,
right.
But he's still hooked in. The boat starts, creeping up on its hindquarters with the bow sticking straight up in the air. I tell him to release. He releases, and once he releases, I take off like a rocket, and I started to panic, like, I'm going to capsize this thing by myself.
Yeah.
Luckily, I came about, and I was able to pick him up, but I can only imagine what James was thinking once you disappeared.
Yeah,
In 30-mile-an-hour winds, 10-foot seas. So
it was all fun and games when we talked about it, but we were both pretty nervous, probably.
Yeah, pretty lucky. It's better to be lucky, right?
Sure.
And so you limp back, and I guess you made communications with your ground crew.
Yeah,
and
they came and picked us up, and another boat came in right there. That day, out of 13 boats, 4 finished.
Okay.
So it was that epic.
And did they finish like in the middle of the night or something?
2 o'clock in the morning.
Crazy.
Yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning.
And try to recover from that physically.
Yeah, and then we had to sail the next day.
Right.
So.
Right. Lessons learned. Go ahead and tell me some of the things that you learned during that race.
Well, I guess the key thing is preparation. Is both physical, mental, your equipment. The nice thing about it is that all these teams, everybody is working together. They're exchanging ideas. Like, here, a lot of the veterans were saying, here's what you need to do for this. Here's what you need to do for that. Right. And a lot of there were some professional sailors there too. I'm like, hey, you might want to try this. So as we were one of the three or four rookie teams there. And it was very nice to see the camaraderie and the sharing of ideas.
Right.
So preparation is key.
There's probably a lot of redundancy. Everybody's got like 2 of everything, more or less.
Yeah, pretty much. Some people carried 2 boats.
Wow.
I mean, which one team had to use their second boat.
Is that right?
Because the whole boat cracked down the middle.
Crazy.
Yeah. So. And the key thing is preparation, is knowing your boat. So this year they actually used the F-18 class boat, and was either a Goodall or it was a NACRA Evolution, and new boats made for buoy racing. So you had to convert it from a buoy racing boat to a long distance boat. And so that's...
Is that equipment? I mean, is that...
It's line changes. It's rigging the things differently. It's a very different way to rig the boat, because you're going to be on attack for sometimes days. Right. So you have to be able to have everything accessible and easy to get to,
Just
and that sort of stuff.
Reach a line and go. Basically.
Versus a buoy race, you're going here, you're going around a buoy, you're constantly changing, so you're going over the same spot of the boat, so you can adjust stuff as you go.
Right.
Right. And then
I get it now.
Little tricks of when you're going upwind. And you don't need your spinnaker, but it has to be on board. So what do you do with it? So there's some rules that you have to follow because it's a class race. Other key thing is having a good crew, especially a good ground crew that knows what they're doing, so that when the racers come in, they can just kind of download what needs to be done. Say, hey, or here's a problem with this, or here we need to adjust this thing differently, and they can go do.
Right.
And we had a great ground crew. We had a young man named Ben Wilson, great guy, didn't know anything about boats. So we trained them.
Gotcha.
And then we had my two sons, Robert and Michael. They switched off. One did 1 week, one did the other week.
Right.
And they know about boats. So between them, they got it about 70% there. And then James and I would come down a little early and get the other 30% taken care of as far as adjustment and get it ready for those days' conditions and everything like that.
Right.
So key is going to be your ground crew.
Right.
But then again, it all comes down with preparation, and that's mental and physical.
And were there moments that you just said, "Boy, we totally missed that,"
Yeah. There's quite a few of those. I guess the biggest thing is, we had a GPS and everything like that. What we didn't count on is that you can't always take it out and look at it. So it was shoved in my front of my life jacket, but I wear glasses. I use bifocals.
Yeah.
James doesn't, so he should have been wearing it, not me.
Right.
Those little isms that you realize once you're out there, and when you're sitting there 15, 20, 30, 40 miles offshore, F-18 catamaran, 12 inches off the water, you're like, what am I doing here?
Yeah. Were you prepared for the endurance part of it all?
I thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, really, what can you do?
Doing what I am doing now, which is you start training physically 2 years ahead of time. I started physical training 6 months ahead of time, which is not enough.
Really?
And I'm not a small guy. And it was, that. But I also spent I was flying down to Florida every other weekend and training with a coach. So
yeah.
James did it a couple times. I did it religiously every 2 weeks. I'd fly down to Florida. I'd spend 3 days sailing on the catamaran. I had either James was there, and if he couldn't make it, I had another crew, a young lady who I hope to see in the Olympics one day.
Yeah.
And she is 16 years old, 102 pounds, soaking wet, and mean as a snake. And she would drive the boat, and I was crew for her. I'd never crewed on my own boat before, and that was an eye-opening experience because now I understand what has to be done more than just telling somebody what to do and doing that. And James had it hard. It's a tough job to crew.
Yeah.
I mean, every fingernail on his fingers was black by the time we were done.
And that's the other thing. The salt water, you're probably soaking wet the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, are you just raw to the bone by the time the race is over?
About a third into the race, my body was starting to, you get sore. You have sores.
Yeah.
And you have to you got to take care of this thing. One of the guys got cut on a leg and one of the legs, and his leg didn't heal for the whole race.
Right.
And they had to put dry bandages on him and all kinds of stuff. I had some issues. I had to do the same thing. So finally, about halfway through the race, I wore a Gore-Tex dry suit. And I tell you one thing, I believe in those things. It is so nice to be dry. Believe. It's so nice to be dry, and believe it or not, it could be 80 degrees and you'll be fine in a Gore-Tex dry suit.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, it's all about the like I said, the physical and the equipment and that sort of stuff. That preparation is key.
Was hypothermia ever an issue, or a potential issue, I should say?
Not in this race. In a previous one, James and I did, yes. I almost I wore the wrong kit, and we had to stop and warm up for a bit because I was hypothermic at that point.
Is that right?
But on this race, it was warm enough. The only one day that I would probably say that going around Cape Lookout, it was cold. That was one of the days that we were cold. I had a dry suit on, and I had fleece underneath.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So what's it like sailing into your hometown? We'll call Kill Devil Hills close enough to your hometown. Was that kind of a source of inspiration, or what was that like?
It was awesome. It was really awesome. It's nice to be able to represent the Outer Banks as Team Outer Banks. I mean, we were Team Outer Banks. We had to get permission from the originators of Team Outer Banks to be able to use that name, and they finally relented.
Really?
And,
it took a while.
It took a while. So Peanut Johnson, I don't know, he's an old ex-war sailor. Him and Charles Thurman and Todd Hart all sailed at one point in time under Team Outer Banks. But they had to talk to Mike O'Brien and Matt Burns and who owned the name, literally owned the name for Team Outer Banks. And they finally relented to let us do it. And once we got to Hatteras, they said, well, I think they're going to finish.
They finally believed.
But I think the most awesome part about it was knowing that I'm coming home.
Yeah.
I'm asleep in my own bed, which was nice. But we're came out of Hatteras, went around the Cape Point, and going all the way up Hatteras Island, Pea Island, and coming across, wind was picking up, coming across Oregon Inlet. There's 4 of us, 4 boats all together, and we all had our spinnakers up, and our spinnaker was black and it had a white sail OBX with a skull and crossbones.
Cool.
And that was the Tourism Bureau let us use that one. And so we come screaming through the cobia fleet that was out there.
Yeah.
And there is probably 40 boats out there.
Of course.
And it was funny. It was like they saw the boats coming, and we'd hoot and holler to let them know we were right behind them, and they would kind of move out of the way like this, and they kind of spread out and then close up behind us as we passed by.
Yeah.
And they saw the Sail OBX, and I recognized some of the boats going through there, and I know these people, and they're like awesome. Hooting and hollering and yelling and screaming.
That's great.
And we come flying through there, and then we get the Nag's Head, and the wind died. So then we limp along,
anticlimactic.
and then the wind picks up again, and then we came into Kill Devil Hills there, and there was probably 500 people there, which was
nice.
Really, it was really cool, and all the ex-World guys were there. We got a picture of the current and the past World folks, the team members, the crew. The crews like Billy Mosley and Matthew Burns and Mike O'Brien and Peanut and Charles and Todd were all there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So what was your final place in the race?
We placed 8th.
Excellent.
Out of 13 boats. Because of our time, we that second day where we had to withdraw, it added 6 hours to our time.
Is that what they do?
Yeah, they add 6 hours.
Gotcha.
So it's all time. It's leg times, and then we would have gotten 5th, but I'm happy with 8th.
Yeah.
I think that was a well placed.
Hey, you finished and you survived, and you came in one piece. So that's pretty good. That's pretty impressive. Are you entering the next World 1000?
We are probably 80% sure we are.
Okay.
And
is that this year or next year, or
it's going to be in 2024? They're supposedly going to run it every other year, so we should hear pretty soon whether they're committing to do it. It's a pretty big commitment financially as well as time wise for these folks.
Okay, so you're 80% there. What is that hinging upon anything in particular, or just in general?
Getting over the PTSD from the first one. No, it's time and money. I mean, it really is. It's not a cheap race. I mean, it's time and money. It's getting the right. We had to save and scrape pennies. We were it's a pretty good sized budget, and we were using points for hotels and as much as we could.
Yeah. What will you change if you enter in? Let's say there's a 24 race. What will you change in general or in preparation or anything like that?
Well, we're anticipating that the race is going to be run, so we're physically, obviously, getting prepared for it. And we already have we have two boats actually. We have the F-18, which is what we ran in last year, but we also have a Carbon 20, which is a 20-foot, 10-foot wide, bigger boat, much more suited for ocean racing. And so there's a couple teams that are petitioning the race committee to allow a second class of boats, and that would be the Carbon 20. Which would be really good.
So it'll be a 2-class race if they do that?
Possible, if they're willing to manage that. And again, it's a big question.
Gotcha.
The original race was run on 16s, and then they had a hodgepodge of boats, and then this last one was a full class race with the F-18 class behind it. So there's certain rules, there's boat weights, there's all kinds of stuff. But the biggest thing was that it made the race affordable for a much bigger audience.
What made it affordable?
Using the F-18.
Is that right?
Because it's a less expensive boat than a Carbon 20.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. How old are you?
I am 54.
All right. Where do you sit in the spectrum of sailors in this race? Are you the old guy?
No, gosh, no.
Really?
No, the old guy was like almost 70.
Really?
Yeah, he was a guy from the Netherlands. Oh yeah, he's awesome.
Stud. Oh my God. I'm 57 and I'm thinking, I really don't have any desire to go out there.
Yeah, Gerard Lewis was his name. And then you got Randy Smythe. He's 60 some odd years old. You have the Australians. They're in their mid 60s. I mean, and the youngest one was 14.
I probably could have done it when I was probably dumb enough to do it when I was 14.
He was driving his dad's boat.
Really?
He was a stud. He was a great kid.
Who was the mate for him?
His father.
Was it really?
Yeah, his father.
Interesting. What does it cost to compete in the World 1000?
Wow, that's a very good question. It depends on your team. But for us, obviously you got to buy the boat. That's about 30 grand. Yeah. And then you got to hotels, expenses, all that kind of stuff. So somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000. And
do these international teams, are they shipping their boat across the Atlantic?
No. There's two ways of doing it. So this last race, I'm also a boat dealer. Right. For NACRA, and so they bought 4 of the boats out of the race were purchased from me. Okay. And the teams came in here to pick up their boats when before the race started. Okay. And then the other ones, they chartered boats from a couple other dealers, or they had a friend who had a boat, or they bought boats locally and then sold them after the race.
Okay. This just popped in my head. What are you eating during the day, in a race?
A lot of salt.
Yeah,
a lot of salt.
Good one.
No. So obviously you have a pretty good breakfast in the morning, but you can't stop at the McDonald's and pick up a hamburger. Yeah. So we have goos, we have food bars. You can Ensure is really good. Yeah. You want some of that.
Speaking
protein.
Of age.
Yeah, speaking of age. You want to have some carbs. The biggest thing is water, and the water we have has electrolytes in it. It's almost like...
Are you doing a Camelback or something?
Camelbacks. Yeah. We use stuff called Liquid IV. Yeah. Which is super diluted, but it's really good. So, once you're out there, I mean, there's no stopping. There's no going to the bathroom. There's no... Yep. The most well said thing from one of the foreign guys was that I think it was one of the Australians. He said, "Yeah, you're sitting on a trapeze, you're sailing, spinnakers out. You're tired, you're thirsty, you got to go to the bathroom. You look at your watch and it's like 11 a.m. The race started at 9, and you have another 40, 50 miles to go."
Right. So the money, obviously, you're probably pulling a lot out of your pocket. You have sponsorships or anything like that?
Yeah. We were lucky enough to have some good sponsors this year. Bonzer Shack was one of our sponsors. Outer Banks Tourism Bureau, which loaned us the logo as well too. And then we had Just for the Beach Rentals. Okay. And East Coast Sailboats. and my wife.
Yeah, really. And speaking of East Coast Sailboats, tell us a little bit about your company.
East Coast Sailboats, we're kind of a mid-sized boat dealer. We cover everything from our region, which is the Carolinas and Virginia, with some brands, to all over the country with other brands. So we carry, 8 brands of sailboats, everything from multi-hulls to trimarans to monohulls.
All sailboats, no motorboats.
No motorboats. All sailboats, 9 feet up to 22 feet. And we run out of Point Harbor, North Carolina, and we're shipping boats all over the country.
Right. So some of these brands you carry, you're the supplier and the dealer, essentially.
Correct. We're the distributor and the dealer as well too.
Right.
A brand like Hobie, for example, that's one of our brands as well too.
Right.
So, but yeah, we our focus is to be able to provide the right boat for the right person at a good cost, so that they can learn the sport of sailing or continue their sport of sailing, whether they're a beginner or all the way up to a professional, all the way up to Olympic sailors.
Right. As a small boat sailor, is that right? I'm not a large boat sailor, but as a small boat sailor, I could say I love recreational sailing. I love the Hobie Cats. My first boat was a Laser. My second boat was a Hobie 16, and of course, being the Hobie dealer was a lot of fun. Learned even more about sailing while I did that, and owning a water sports business. So I can say recreational sailing is what I love, and I'm glad that you're pushing that and promoting that. I think it's important. Hope to see more young people getting into it. I think you're doing a great job of getting the young people on the Outer Banks into it. I see a lot of kids out here attending your camps and everything. I talk to kids, and they've been to your camp, so you're definitely making a great impression there. As we wrap things up, is there anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah. Besides East Coast Sailboats, if you ever want a boat, come see us.
What's that website?
It's www.eastcoastsailboats.com. But some of the other things that we're looking into the future on is we're looking into a way to be able to bring more sailing to the Outer Banks. We have, like I said earlier, we have all this water, and we see a lot of water. We need to see more boats on it.
Right.
And what better way to do it than sailing? It's such a great sport, and so we're working on creating one of our brands, Sail OBX or Sail Outer Banks, to do just that, is to be able to bring boats to venues here, as well as promote sailing as a recreational sport here in the Outer Banks for folks coming to visit. And we're doing that through the ability of trying to find more and better water access for everybody, as well as our event management as far as regattas and other sailing events here in the Outer Banks.
Excellent. Well, I wish you the best with that. If there's anything I could do to help you promote that, that'd be great. And everybody out there should try to support Hardy and East Coast Sailboats and all the sailing that goes out in the Outer Banks. And if you have kids that want to learn how to sail, it's a great way for kids to get out on the water, learn their independence, and just kind of be free out there on the boat, enjoying nature. So, Hardy, thanks for your time today.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it.
I appreciate Hardy Peters joining me for this episode. Always a good time with him. And you should check him out at eastcoastsailboats.com if you're interested in getting into the sport. If you want to go for a little sailboat cruise, he has that Surfer Girl boat up in Duck. You can find that at sailobx.com or at norbanks.com. And if you could, please leave me a positive review on Apple, Spotify, or Stitcher. I'd greatly appreciate it. And until next time, make it a good one.